Welcome to the Highly Sensitive and Strong podcast. I'm Daphne Lee, a former anxiety sufferer turned holistic anxiety coach, mindfulness teacher, mom, and guide for highly sensitive people. Anxiety was part of my life for as long as I can remember, and as a teenager, I was hospitalized for anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia. Since then, I've learned to transform those challenges into strengths, and now I help people like you calm their nervous systems and live in a way that truly honors you. Each week, I'll share honest conversations, insights, and practical tools to help you heal anxiety in your body and mind so you can thrive as your highly sensitive and strong self. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hi, friend. I'm really glad you're here. Let's begin by taking a moment to land together, being present in our bodies. If it feels good, place a hand over your heart or belly. Maybe feel the surface beneath you or your feet on the ground. Maybe notice your breath without trying to change it. Just arriving here together. This episode is a gentle re entry for me, and maybe for you too. Over the past few months, I've been away from the podcast because I've been moving through a season of deep grief. And as a highly sensitive person, that grief hasn't lived just in my thoughts or emotions, it's lived in my body, in my nervous system, my energy, and my capacity to move through the world. Today, I want to talk about what it means to carry grief while still functioning, not fixing it, not resolving it, just living with it. Because I know many of you are doing that too. So for me, this season has included the death of one of my closest loved ones, my dad. And it's also included many other forms of loss happening all at once. I've had the loss of friends to illness, the anticipatory grief of watching people I love dearly decline, and also the collective grief of living in a country where cruelty, harm, and the erosion of care are happening in very real ways. So, grief doesn't only come from death, grief can come from watching something you love change or disappear. It can come from losing a sense of safety, of trust, or meaning in our lives. It can be witnessing suffering that you cannot stop and realizing the world is not what you hoped it would be. So, for highly sensitive people, all of that lands very deeply within us. Collective grief isn't abstract. We don't just understand what's happening, we feel it. Our bodies respond as if the harm is happening close by or directly within us, because on a nervous system level, it is. And often we try to keep functioning as if nothing is happening because life doesn't stop asking things of us. So, grief is not just sadness. It can show up in many different ways, and it can look like exhaustion, brain fog, sensitivity to noise or light or input. It can be irritability and anger, numbness, the need to withdraw, the need for more rest than feels reasonable. And none of that means you're doing grief wrong. It means your nervous system is working very hard to metabolize something heavy, something that looks like shutdown, Irritability or numbness is actually the nervous system saying, this is too much to take in all at once. These states are not failures, they're temporary shelters for us. And so, if you are listening to this while trying to get through your days, showing up for work, family, responsibilities, I want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. Grief asks us to slow down in a world that keeps demanding speed and attention. There's something else I want to share, and it feels a little vulnerable, but I think it matters. During the final 6 weeks of my dad's life, I stayed with him full time, caring for him. My partner and my mom were at our home, which was just about a mile down the road, but my world had become very small and very focused on my dad. And when my dad actually passed, it took me a full week before I even remotely felt ready to return to my own home. I want to stay with that moment for a bit. I didn't want to leave my dad's house, not because I didn't want to go home or I didn't love my home, but because leaving felt like it would make his being gone so much more real, more final, more unbearable. Staying there felt like a kind of holding, like if I didn't cross that threshold yet, some part of him was still close. I also realized I needed permission from my partner to take as much time as I needed, which he gave me without hesitation, and permission from myself to not rush the transition. That mattered. I didn't force myself to get back to normal. I waited. And what told me it was time to go home wasn't logic, it was my body. I started to feel a very gentle pull toward home, not urgency, but just a quiet desire to do something ordinary again and to be in my own space, to take a small step back into daily life. And that's how I knew it was time to go. My grief didn't disappear, but my capacity shifted just enough to move forward. For sensitive nervous systems, transitions after loss need to be felt, not forced, because the body knows when it's ready. And even after I went home, I noticed something that surprised me. I felt myself withdrawing, not just from the world, but from the people who love me the most. I was more irritable, and at times I felt angry without a clear reason. I had a hard time feeling connected to my partner and my mom, sometimes even my kids, even though they were supportive and right there with me experiencing their own grief. And for a while, I felt more depressed and shut down than I can ever remember being in my life. So looking back, I can see that my system was protecting the depth of the bond that I had just lost with my dad. It wasn't rejecting love, but it was guarding something sacred that had just been torn from me. When I first got home, everything felt like too much. The house felt loud, it felt busy, overstimulating, and I found myself bristling, almost recoiling if my partner used anything other than a very gentle tone of voice with me. Even neutral moments felt sharp in my body. And that surprised me because he wasn't doing anything wrong, and neither was my mom, but neither of them are what I'd call highly sensitive. They aren't always quick to pick up on subtle shifts in mood or energy. And in that season of my life, I was incredibly raw. My nervous system was wide open and everything felt amplified: sounds, voices, movement, expectations. So my body reacted before my mind could even make sense of things. And I want to say this because I really think it matters. That irritation isn't a character flaw. It wasn't a relationship problem I was having. It was a nervous system response to profound loss. My system had lost its primary attachment. It was overwhelmed, and it was doing its best to protect what little capacity I had left. And I want to say this because I know it's important. It's important for me to hear, and it's important for you to know in case you ever experience this. But nothing was wrong with me. My nervous system had been deeply bonded to my dad. He was my person. And when that bond was suddenly gone, my system didn't immediately know how to reattach somewhere else. So, for highly sensitive people, attachment is not just emotional, it's somatic, it lives in the body. And when a primary attachment is lost, the system often goes into a kind of protective withdrawal. And that withdrawal can look like irritability, numbness, disconnection, pushing people away without meaning to, and feeling like no one else fits the way that person did. And maybe no one else ever will. So if you've experienced this, it doesn't mean you don't still love the other people in your life. It just means that your system is grieving very deeply. Now, I'm happy to say that state didn't last forever for me. As time has passed and the sharpest edges of my grief has been softening, something else has started to emerge. I found myself craving connection again, wanting to turn toward love instead of away from it, wanting my meditations, my thoughts, and my actions to help cultivate closeness and warmth again. It was as if my system needed time to mourn very fully before it could risk opening again. And slowly, very slowly, love and connection have begun to prevail again, not because the loss has disappeared, but because my capacity has expanded. Grief didn't close my heart permanently, but it did reshape it. So, one of the questions we might consider when we are navigating grief is, how do I stay with grief without being consumed by it? How do I honor it without drowning in it? And my answer is, you don't stay in grief all the time. You stay with it, and you also take time to step away. Part of staying with grief is remembering that you get to choose how close you are to it on any given day. And the other part is that grief comes in waves, and those waves can arrive very unexpectedly. But you are allowed to touch it gently. You're allowed to step back when it's too much. And that stepping away might look like really allowing yourself to rest more than usual, letting yourself sleep in, Oh my goodness, over the last few months, I have stayed in bed longer than I can ever remember doing before. I've spent more time watching TV. So that's another way that we might step away, letting ourselves be distracted. Stepping away might look like laughing, even sharing dark humor, which is something I did with my dad before he died and with my loved ones afterwards. Going outside, taking long walks, being with animals or people who feel safe. These are all ways that we can gently step away from our grief when it's too much. And none of that means you're avoiding grief, it means you're regulating. A sensitive nervous system needs oscillation, moving between contact with our pain and moments of relief. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. I want to say something gently here because many people struggle with this, especially those of us who feel very deeply. Feeling moments of joy or lightness in the midst of your pain does not betray your grief. And it doesn't mean you're turning away from what hurts. Grief and aliveness or glimmers of joy can coexist. In fact, for many of us, those moments of aliveness are what allow us to stay present with grief rather than shutting down or becoming overwhelmed by it. For me, those glimmers have shown up through humor and sometimes even dark humor, spending time in nature, being with my kids and my animals, snuggling with my cats, connection with people who feel safe, and small moments of tenderness and presence. These moments don't erase loss, they don't make it smaller, and they don't mean I care any less. What they do is make the weight of grief more bearable to carry. And this is especially important to name when we are also bearing witness to deep suffering in the lives of people we love, in our communities, and in the world around us. For highly sensitive people, witnessing suffering can land just as strongly in the body as personal loss. And there can be an unspoken belief that if we allow ourselves moments of joy or ease, we are somehow turning away from that suffering or failing to care deeply enough. But the opposite can also be true and is often true. Those moments of aliveness are what keep our hearts open. They help us stay connected instead of collapsing or hardening. They give our nervous systems enough space to keep showing up with compassion, clarity, and care. So if you notice glimmers in your own life, even very small ones, you don't have to push them away to prove that you're grieving enough or caring enough. Letting yourself feel bright and alive and even joyful doesn't dishonor grief. It helps you stay human in the midst of it. Before we close, I want to invite a brief moment of presence. Just look around the space you're in and name a few things you can see. Notice something neutral or pleasant. Notice the sounds happening in and around the space that you're in. Let your body know right now, in this moment, I am safe enough. Take a nice, slow breath in and a longer breath out. And if you're carrying something heavy right now, personally, relationally, or collectively, I want you to know you're not alone. And sometimes, even as we're learning how to carry our grief, even more loss arrives. I've experienced this a lot lately. And when that happens, we begin again, gently, imperfectly, together. You don't have to fix your grief. You don't have to make meaning out of it. You don't have to be okay. You're allowed to move slowly. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to keep living imperfectly. So, in the next episodes, we're going to keep exploring how to hold grief in a sensitive nervous system without collapsing and without hardening. For now, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for letting this be a shared human space. Thank you for being your highly sensitive and strong self.